So I want to respond directly to a series of comments which have been exchanged under the video I made about uh, the existence of the soul and the sort of relationship between science and religion, or faith and reason. Uh, it's a discussion I was having with jaydubyah29. I'll post a link to his channel in the description. Um, this is a very hard discussion to have because I don't think we're looking at the field of experience from the same perspective, or from the same peak, let's say. We're on different edges of the sphere of reality, looking and seeing something seemingly different. But it may just be an issue of miscommunication. And I think ultimately that this is one of my metaphysical commitments, that all disagreements between thinkers in any given conversation are the result of a misunderstanding rather than one of the two parties being in possession of the truth and the other being wrong. There is no wrong, no false thought. All thoughts are real by virtue of the fact that they appear, that they arise as phenomena. And to look at truth as something which includes both thought or mind and matter or sensation of the objectively existing exterior world, which science measures. If we're going to say that these are both real, then we're saying that both science and religion have access to truth, and experiential access. Certainly what we mean by science and what we mean by religion is important, because religion includes the Catholic Church, and what Pope Ratzinger says is true about the nature of the human relationship between good and evil, or relationship to good and evil. But religion can also refer to, what Erigena, or what Meister Eckhart, or mystical, heart-centered Christian teachers had to say about the nature of things and the purpose of human life. We look at someone like Plato, and a profoundly religious, or at least mystical religious view, where the human being and all of the cosmos participated in an eternal and intelligent divinity, in a realm of ideas that were perfectly ordered. The cosmos, according to Plato, was a moving image, or is a moving image of eternity. And many years later, William Blake would say that eternity is in love with the productions of time, in the marriage of heaven and hell. So in this religious cosmology, or I guess theological cosmology, knowledge is sort of understood in a wider context than just the narrow context which methodological naturalism would say, natural science, has tried to squeeze it into. So knowledge is not just about what can be measured in the external world, the so-called empirical sensory world, because we can do objective measurements in that world to a certain extent. When we start talking about intergalactic space, if Einstein is right and space is curved, then space-time, that is curved, then we really can't make reliable measurements in deep space. Whitehead had this insight and tried to rethink Einstein's relativity mathematically so that curved space wasn't really necessary. But, I mean, the problem is that in the modern age and in our move towards secularity, we, the intelligent human mind or common sense has decided that only science can give us knowledge, and what used to be considered religious truth, which was granted in the medieval period as revelation, a divine revelation in a book, in a particular book. I think in the modern context now, yeah, science gives us knowledge, but we also have a new kind of knowledge, which isn't like the old revelatory knowledge taken on authority, which was, the way it worked in the medieval period. Rather, it's as religion was experienced in the beginning by the Greeks, by Plato, who didn't just make up and fantasize about this realm of ideas, but experienced it in the things themselves, things of the world. Because in the world he sensed the likeness of a divine mind. So this sort of permeation of the universe with mind, and this enchanted view and understanding of the cosmos not as an empty space full of dead matter, some sort of a machine, but rather as a living creature with a life cycle, and perhaps the ability to reproduce, which begs the question as to what birth did. The universe is an organic phenomenon primarily, not a physical one, at least in the modern sense of the term. In the Greek sense, physis is sort of, it has the sense of the growth of a plant. So there's a certain life to the physical world for the Greek mind. Sort of, Aristotle nowadays would be called a vitalist, though there's some connotations attached to vitalism that aren't really true of Aristotle. He didn't think that form was separate from matter. He saw them as the same, or at least as two sides of the same process. So when I tried to defend faith, or let's just say that the supernatural, I'm doing so in the service of a kind of knowledge which human beings do have access to. We know the world already, always, through more than our outward-facing physical senses. Even in science, we know more. Think about mathematics and logic itself. You can't do science without these, and yet their principles are entirely invisible, weightless, not really locatable in space or time. So science already concerns itself with the supersensible. It's just a matter of becoming more conscious of this concentration, more conscious of what we've always already been doing, there was this, at the culmination of medieval philosophy and with scholasticism, there was the sense that the structure of human language was identical to the structure of nature. And there was a beautiful sort of harmonious interaction between the levels of this structure, which, if it were read properly, would lead one to the divinity, to the creator. And from the creator, then back down through this network of connections to all the many creatures below. I say below, and I guess this picture is somewhat hierarchical. There is a good, and it shines down from beyond, from a transcendent plane into the immanent, and the material, and the physical, and the generated, the dying. But we don't necessarily have to separate these, the eternal and the temporal, or the creator and the creature, God and the universe. These aren't separate substances or separate entities. I think there's a necessary relationship between the two. And so, what then, I'll end with this, what then would science become if it's true that the universe is a living creature? Well, I think, for one thing, was basically, instead of physics being the foundational science, biology would become the foundational science. And this would be, I think, a necessary result of the anthropic principle. We can only know the universe which created life, and everything we know about the universe is a result of the particular formation of our life, the structure of our nervous system allows us to know a certain kind of universe, and really only that kind of universe. But the universe did create these structures, and so the living universe has only formed itself in microcosm in the human being. So this doesn't mean that because the universe is alive that we can't know it scientifically. By examining it experientially and empirically, we can learn a lot about the universe by interacting with it in an embodied technological sense, and building all kinds of instrumentation to look deeper and penetrate further. We can build 17-mile-long circumference atom smashers and discover all kinds of interesting things about the nature of nature. But it doesn't make theology or philosophy irrelevant, because all of this scientific activity has some kind of an imaginative background to it, which is to say that it's embedded in the whole history of cultural development. And science is a cultural activity that's taking place in the civilization of a biological entity, an organism which has emerged out of the Earth, which emerged out of the sun, which emerged out of a cloud of hydrogen floating in the Milky Way galaxy. And this process of emergence has led a creature, a human being, to a recognition of its own true nature. That is, the universe recognizing its own true nature in the human being. This is what the scientist is doing, right? That's, a profoundly spiritual activity, a sense of communion with nature itself, where the scientist participates in really the soul of the world, the soul of nature, the world soul, the anima mundi. And, soul is not a medieval word. We all know what it means, I think.